Um, I think the hardest thing for me about, I wrote stories for years before I even attempted a novel. And I've been writing stories now for about 15 years. And with the novel, it's so much more book. Like it really is like an issue of quantity and endurance. Someone once compared writing a novel to crawling across a desert. And it can feel like that at times because even if you feel like the characters, it's a matter of understanding them well enough to get 300 pages out of them. And I think for me, that act of compression, of setting the novel over the course of just 3 days, helped me to think about it as a long, short story instead of a novel. Even though I've heard from some readers that the chapters feel structured kind of like stories within the novel, I think for me, the whole thing, by keeping it compact, I tricked myself into writing long enough for it to be novel length. And it was a lot longer. In earlier drafts, it was up to 600 pages, but I was able to trim it way down because nothing changed. Like nothing, there was not much more that happened, but it was just awfully wordy. I think for me, I overdo it at first, and then I figure out where to pull back. I think that the humor is misused when it's used to kind of sidestep an important emotion. Like for me, one example was when I saw one of the recent Star Wars movies, and Luke and Leia are seeing each other again for the first time in a long time. And for me, it was this really beautiful emotional moment. And then Luke said something like, "I like what you did with your hair." And I was watching it in the theater, which
Yeah.
sounds like a very old sentence now. Imagine it being in a movie theater with other people, and everybody laughed, and I just kind of grimaced, and I was like, "Oh, but I was." And that for me, that's a choice, but I would have loved to linger in the tension of the moment of twin siblings just reuniting and just hold on to the kind of difficult emotion of that instead of joke your way out of it. So, and I know I have a tendency to do that too. So when I go for a big swing, like Jake at the end of that scene, I've got to decide, am I, being honest to the emotion in the moment and giving the reader like a deserved like moment to laugh after a long tension, or am I just would it be better to let the reader kind of sit uncomfortably in the tension? And it's always a tough call to make, and I don't know that I always do it right, but yeah, I do love humor, and I think I remember Saunders saying in an interview that similar. I'm no George Saunders, but that he would say that his early drafts are just him trying to be funny and then pulling back, where it's like too much slapstick, too much over the top. And I think I have that same problem. My editor and I talked about it. We realized, there was nothing really wrong with that, except there was nothing being done on the first day that couldn't be referenced in backstory. And if we began instead with what was chapter 11 is now chapter 1, with that tragedy on the boat, not only does the book begin with like a whoa and kind of grab the reader, but you're able to reference everything else in just a matter of sentences. Like they had arrived the day before, and it had been revealed to them that the house was for sale, and all that throat clearing and revelation of character comes across, in the rest of the novel. It was essentially what I was asking the reader to do was, sit tight for 150 pages while I tell you about these characters, and then the novel will really begin. Whereas a more complicated, sophisticated way to do it is, let's begin in media res, in the middle of the action, and you'll catch up and you'll figure out what's going on and why these people are here. And so I think that was it. And then the rest of those another 100 or 150 pages worth of stuff was really just trimming, like just cutting long passages. I love description, I love
Yeah.
setting, I love describing, so when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had friends who had a converted double wide trailer on Lake Toxaway in North Carolina, and we would go up there for 1 week every summer, and I fell in love with the place. And that Lake Christopher is Lake Toxaway, like it's just a nickname for it in the book. But all those places I described, from the ice cream parlor in Highlands to the old movie theater there, the waterfall and the river, the parts of Asheville, like those are all real places anyone can go. And And I've gotten actually a couple of letters from people saying like, I know that ice cream place because it's such a distinctive, like there's no other place like it. Like this 2-story ice cream parlor over a trout river in Highlands. Like if you've been to Highlands, you know that place. Although it's not run by a drug dealer, as far as I know in real life. But I would go overboard. Like I love setting, and I did spend way too many. I would definitely have tested the reader's patience with early drafts with just me just describing things. I love it here. Like it's a weird state. I don't love all the politics, but I love the nature. I love the people. Florida is whatever you want it to be. St. Pete is very different than Orlando, which is different than Tallahassee, which is different than Miami. And in that way, I think Florida is a kind of microcosm of the country, the same way a state like Ohio is. And that's why we're purple states, because you can make the state whatever you want it to be, depending on which town or city you want to live in. So I love Florida, but it was fun, poking fun at it from the Sun's points of view. Oh, God. Okay, yeah. Probably the best story collection I've read in the last 5 years is called Fight No More by Lydia Millay.
I haven't read that one.
Yeah, she's got a new novel out, which I just started. I haven't finished it yet. It's called A Children's Bible. But her collection, her earlier collection was great. It was a finalist for the Pulitzer. It's good, but I mean, it's great. I don't want to be on record saying that she's pretty good. No, she's incredible. But I just can't explain how this book, Fight No More, is one of the finest books I've ever read. And I'm just so surprised that it didn't get more attention. I think it's a weird book. It's almost novel in stories because a number of the characters come in and out of each other. But I don't think I'll do it justice, just except to say that definitely go out there and check out Fight No More by Lydia Millay. Other collections that have really gotten me over the past couple years, Elizabeth McCracken's Thunderstruck, which I think is just a perfect short story collection. All of George Saunders' collections, all of Edward P. Jones, both of his collections. I've taught his story Marie. One, in addition to, even in a story collection where we get different characters every story and you get a different place every story, where maybe a place isn't coming to life, nevertheless, it seems like there are still some sort of themes or through lines or weird kind of just hang-ups the writer has that can be really fun to kind of chart across a collection. Like, even if all these stories are supposed to be different, it's supposed to be this eclectic book, you still begin to chart the author's obsessions. And that's like kind of like a fun little puzzle. But the real reason I gravitate so much toward collections is they're so good. And I think it's because it's so hard to get them published. When you look at like the Story Prize every year, there are usually like 100 to 120 entries every year and that's all that was published, all year, like including from the big houses, the university presses, the small presses, the contest winners. And then you look at the nominations for the Pulitzer Prize in fiction, and there are almost 1,000 because there are so many more novels. So I think just to get a story collection published, whether it's through Simon & Schuster or Grey Wolf or any of these amazing places that publish story collections, if they're publishing it, like, it's usually a really damn good book. Like, it is a book that has somehow gotten an agent to try to sell it, or it's won a major contest that hundreds or thousands of writers have entered if they couldn't get an agent. They're so hard to get that usually that you're going to have a very well-crafted book that someone spent years on. And plus, usually with a story collection, most of those stories already first passed the test of being published in magazines and journals. And so they've been twice edited by journal editors and then by a book editor. So the number of gatekeepers to get a collection into your hands is so high